Now that we have read My Brilliant, Resilient Mind, let's learn about a tool that we can use to help ground ourselves whenever we become anxious. This tool is called the Thought Detective, and it helps reframe our anxieties into realistic perspectives. The twins in My Brilliant, Resilient Mind struggled with anxiety and negative thinking. They had to learn to reframe their thoughts into a positive mindset. A mindset is how you think about things, including what you believe about yourself, others, and the world. Mindsets have the power to make you feel good or worse about yourself. Mindsets are not permanent. Just like the twins, you can reframe your mindset to be more helpful to you and calm your anxieties. Another name for anxious thoughts is called cognitive distortion. Cognitive distortion is a clinical term that describes distorted, unhelpful, or misleading ways of thinking. It's important to remember that our thoughts aren't always true. Distorted thoughts inaccurately shape how you perceive your life, which negatively impacts the choices you make, often making the situation even worse. Everyone experiences cognitive distortions on occasion, but when they become your go-to thinking approach, the hard parts of life feel even harder and you feel stuck. Remember, our mindset can change. It's important to learn different tools to help reframe unhelpful thoughts so we avoid feeling stuck in our anxieties. Today you will identify an anxiety or worry, examine the evidence, and create a more balanced thought. You are going to become a thought detective. Thought detectives identify the anxiety or worry swirling in their minds, examine the evidence for and against that thought, and create realistic scenarios to help ground themselves and calm those anxieties. For this tool, you will need a pen or a pencil, a piece of paper, or a journal. Thought detectives use the following 3 steps to reframe anxious thoughts. First, identify an anxiety or worry. Second, look for evidence for and against your anxiety. Third, write a balanced thought. We will go over each step together. Step 1. Identify your anxiety. Think, what is one anxious thought you've had recently? It can be a thought that has been reoccurring, or it can be a thought that keeps lingering in your mind. For example, my anxiety is, I am stressed out about Mrs. Geach's math test. I feel like I'm going to fail it and my score is going to hurt my grade. Now that you've identified your anxious thought, write down evidence for and against your anxiety. Remember, thought detectives always look for evidence to prove their case. What evidence do you have that proves your anxiety is realistic? What evidence do you have that disproves your anxiety is realistic? For example, my anxious thought is I'm going to fail Mrs. Geach's math test and bring down my grade. My evidence for this thought is I have a hard time understanding the math problems. I didn't do well on the quizzes. One quiz I had a D- and the other was a D+. I didn't turn in my homework last week because I didn't know how to do the problems. My parents are going to be upset at me for having bad grades. My evidence against this thought is Mrs. Geach always does a review before we take a test. I passed the last test with a B+. Mrs. Geach said we can stay after school for extra help. Mrs. Geach makes learning math a lot of fun and easy to understand. My parents said they can get me a tutor if I need help with my math grade. After looking at the evidence, thought detectives take a step back and reframe their perspective. Think, what is a more realistic, helpful thought you could tell yourself? For example, after looking at my evidence, I'm going to think a new thought based on what I know about Mrs. Geach's math class. My new thought is, I can ask Mrs. Geach for extra help and practice as much as I can before the test. I can do the best I can on this test. With Mrs. Geach's help, I can pass the test. If I don't pass, Mrs. Geach will let me take a redo test so that the test won't hurt my grade. Now that you have practiced using the thought detective tool, reflect on your experiences. How did it feel to look at your anxiety and your evidence? When could you use this tool? For example, when I used the thought detective to help me calm my anxiety about the math test, it helped me identify the problem running through my head. When I looked at my evidence, I felt a lot calmer because I realized I can ask for help and I don't need to be alone in my thoughts. This tool also helped me see how big my anxiety really is and gain some perspective on what really could happen. In the future, I think I can use this tool whenever I feel stressed out about my grades. I like to try this out the next time I'm worried about my friends and what my classmates think of me. I would like to keep a journal with me so I can write these exercises down. Remember, your mindset can change. When faced with anxiety, you can reframe your thoughts to be positive and helpful so that you can calm your mind. Become a thought detective. First, identify an anxiety or worry. Second, examine evidence for and against your anxious thoughts. Third, create a balanced thought and a realistic scenario that helps calm your anxieties. Keep a journal with you so you can use this tool to help ground you the next time you become anxious. Most importantly, you are capable, you are brilliant, you are resilient. Don't let the anxious thoughts win.